Hello, today we're going to take a look at 3 business cases. The first being accurate, up-to-date customer information. So making sure that all your systems have the most recent customer information and they all reflect the same data. So what we're going to do for that is use NetSuite as our master and update or create customers in ServiceNow based on the information that's in NetSuite. Then we'll take bug tracking. So a case is created in ServiceNow, have that automatically create a case in Jira, and then finally update, when an update happens in Jira, update ServiceNow, which will also create a purchase order in NetSuite to really minimize data entry across the system. So the 4 use cases we see here are going to be first, so NetSuite to ServiceNow, syncing the customer data from NetSuite to ServiceNow. ServiceNow using their workflows to actually create a case in Jira, using the outbound messages that they have, and using Jitterbit's API platform in the middle to accept that payload from ServiceNow. Then we're going to take a look at when a ticket's updated in Jira, and updating that status in ServiceNow, and then finally, with that ticket being in the correct status, pulling that information from ServiceNow to create purchase orders in NetSuite. So the first one we're going to take a look at is that NetSuite to ServiceNow. So what I've got here is in NetSuite, I've started to create a sample customer, basic information, just some address and phone number information. So we're going to go ahead and save that to create the user in NetSuite. And then here's where we'll start taking a look at Jitterbit. What we're going to do is go ahead and inside Jitterbit, the first thing we're going to do is do a customer sync. So we're going to do a search against customers in NetSuite. And we're going to go ahead and insert those into ServiceNow using their RESTful API. Go ahead and execute that. All right, submitting it to the agent. All right, and what we'll do is now take a look in ServiceNow, make sure those accounts got created. All right, so we have Brad's Corner Store now. So that really shows that use case 1 is using our platform to sync a customer from NetSuite into ServiceNow. Now we'll take a look at that outbound message that's actually we're going to receive it from ServiceNow as a case is created, use our API platform to translate it or transform it, and then go ahead and create that issue in Jira. So let's go ahead and jump in here. Let's go ahead and create a new case. All right, so printer 1 needs a roller kit. And we can set the priority, and there's some other information we could be bringing across, but we'll keep it fairly simple for right now. So we'll go ahead and submit that. And so on the back end, ServiceNow is now using their outbound message to actually send to our REST API that we have hosted here at Jitterbit. So let's look and make sure that issue got created. So here is the printer 1 needs a roller kit. We're also grabbing the external ID from ServiceNow. So if we have to do any updates back, we have that key in the middle to be able to talk to both systems. So let's take a look at Jitterbit of what that looks like on Jitterbit's side. So first we define our source. So our source is, we know it's going to be coming from an API, and we're going to be wanting to insert that into Jira. And we do have multiple different connectors that we do use standards based. So we're going to use HTTP. We're going to be doing a post verb. And then in the middle, we have the structure that we're getting sent from ServiceNow and the structure we want to go ahead and submit to Jira. It is a drag and drop, but you can also, if you need to modify, this is a very simple expression where we're just concatenating two values together with a colon in the middle. But if you have other functions you need to use, like if you're doing a formatting of date time or you need to do database lookups, that sort of thing, you can also do that here as well. All right, so let's take a look at what it takes inside of our platform now that we've created this operation, how to expose that so the internet, it's available on the internet. So let's go ahead and go to our management console. So our management console, this is where your sysadmins or your operations or your people day to day might work more often. So this is where you can expose a new agent or create a new agent, where you can check on the status of your operations, view event logs, things like that, download the latest studio. But it's also where we have our cloud or our API management as well. All right, we'll go ahead and switch over to the environment we're using. So this is the API that's been exposed. So you'll notice it is a wizard-driven setup to where you pick the project and then the operation and then the method that we're expecting and then the type of response. So if there's no response or if we can define a response for this one, there is no response. And then also a security profile. So if there's any security credentials that need to be around this endpoint, we can configure those here as well. We're going to go ahead and leave it as is and go ahead and publish this. Then you notice the URL is available. But another nice thing is the documentation that comes along with it. So by default, we create the Swagger 2.0 or Open API documentation, and it can be regenerated at any time. So what we do is, based on what your operation looks like inside Jitterbit, we interrogate that to figure out, what kind of structure should you be expecting, and if you have a response, what that response looks like. So here's the ServiceNow one, and you'll see here we have the structure that we're expecting. So our numbers all in strings, and the response, which is we're just expecting a code 200. But this also gives you the ability to try it out. So if you do want to test it, this is a place you can test it as well. But this structure here, you'll notice, you could use this to actually, in ServiceNow, create your REST post. So in here, you define the post. This is essentially the same structure, only we switch it out with the variables that ServiceNow is going to actually provide during runtime. And that's essentially how we set up the REST API. So now anytime a new case is created, it goes ahead and calls that API with those values. And then Jitterbit does the translation here to send anything over that needs to go to Jira. So that was the example of how we can use ServiceNow and Jitterbit to create a case in Jira. So now let's look and see if we update that case status or the incident status in Jira, how do we get that back to ServiceNow? So first, let's go to the cases so we know what we're looking at. So right now, the case status is new. And what we're going to do is over here in Jira is we're going to go ahead and click in progress. So this is going to move it along the status. And as part of the Jitterbit operation flow we've created, we're going to search Jira for any cases where it has an external ID, so we know it's come from our integration, and it's not a task. Right now, we're really limiting this to bugs. So we're going to go ahead and execute this search, or this operation chain. So it's going to pull back all of the issues from Jira. It's going to loop through them and update as many cases in ServiceNow. Right now, we really only have one, but it could be hundreds, it could be 10, it could be one. It really doesn't impact the way that this operation functions. So it's gone ahead and updated that one. Now, if we come back here to ServiceNow, we can actually see, the status flip over to open. So that concludes the use case 3, which is that Jira to update the status from Jira back to ServiceNow. But let's go ahead and take a closer look at the next one, which is that once it's in that open state, we want it to automatically create a purchase order in NetSuite. Let's take a look at what that looks like. All right. So the operation itself, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off and then go through explaining the different pieces and parts. So, like I said before, we have a operation here, and the operation is getting its source from ServiceNow, and we're getting cases, and we provide the username and password. And then if there's any additional things that we need to do to this endpoint, we can skip, we can apply search, things like that. And then our NetSuite, we tell it what type of operation we're going to do. We're going to do an upsert. We're going to do it against purchase orders. And then it also pulls back the sample request and response structures that we should expect. And you'll notice a couple calls here. So during the transformation, we're needing to call back out to ServiceNow to look up the actual NetSuite ID that created that account, so that we can use that as part of our upsert. But then on the response side, we also see once we're done, as long as it was successful, we want to go ahead and update that purchase order number that was created in NetSuite back in ServiceNow so that it's available, so we know it's been processed. Could be more than the purchase number. You might want to push it along the life cycle, but for right now, we're just populating a purchase order number field. So inside of this, what does that look like? This is kind of a very standard mapping where you're not usually mapping every field, but the nice thing is you can also load test data. So given a test file, you can actually see what your source data looks like, and then as it's transformed from your source to your target, what does that look like? How does that apply during the transformation? And you can see the different values populating. There's one I'd like to take a special look at here, and this is a lookup where we're actually, based on the account ID, we're actually running a separate operation to pull back the NetSuite ID to try to look up the ID. This one, the sample data is old, so it doesn't have that ID in ServiceNow, but this is something that would definitely run if we had an active link that was still valid. With Jitterbit, you do get the ability to run multiple functions. So if you have to do, math or conversions, or you have to do date time conversions, or you want to do a database lookup, these are all functions that we have available to use. You also have the ability to test. So this actually gives you the ability, given an input and an output, you can actually see what the response is going to be from Jitterbit. So hey, I want to see if I change the value, what that would look like coming through. All right, so that's kind of the basics on mapping. It is drag and drop for the most part, but again, like I said, you can add custom transformations if needed. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like in ServiceNow. So now that we've ran that transformation, we're going to have, so this is going to be the purchase order inside of NetSuite. So let's go ahead and take this, and then we're going to go ahead and go over here to NetSuite and go into our purchase order list. And you notice that that purchase order number matches, and then let's go ahead and dive into it. And you'll see here that the customer, has been updated and the item has been set to order. And that concludes the demo portion. Thank you.